Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Moscow City Council. This is Monday, May the 6th, and welcome everybody here. And with that, I will say this. I am going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd all rise with us, please, and join us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and the first thing of order today is our proclamation for Bike Month for all your bicyclists out there, including myself. Whereas National Bike Month began in May 1956, and whereas bicycling has been an affordable, environmentally sound mode of transportation, excellent form of exercise, and fun recreation since the first pedal-propelled bicycle appeared in the 1860s. And whereas local government is committed to educating motorists and cyclists about the safe vehicle operation to reduce accidents, injuries, and fatalities, and whereas bicycling contributes to retail sales, tourism dollars and planning, infrastructure, and policies that support community livability, and whereas bicycling reduces heart disease, obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and improves mental health and cardiovascular fitness. And whereas Moscow supports the objectives of Let's Move, Safe Routes to School, Complete Streets, Fill the Racks, the Officer New Bill Safety Fair, and more. And whereas our region is gaining favorable recognition for bicycle-friendly accommodations, including Moscow Intermodal Transit Center, more convenient and functional bike racks, and a growing network of bicycle pedestrian trails. And whereas Bike to Work Day in Moscow is Friday, May the 17th, 2019. Now, therefore, I, Bill Emmert, the mayor of the city of Moscow, do hereby proclaim May 2019 to be Bike Month in Moscow, and I urge everyone who can cycle to work, school, shopping, and errands, or simply for pleasure, to improve health and find refreshment and invigoration to lessen adverse impacts on climate and to reduce transportation costs. And with that, with this proclamation, I know we've got Jonathan Gruden here, as well as Margaret Dibble and others. Let's get up here and come on up. Let's get the whole group up here and others.
Yes. Oh, don't fool with that Margaret Dibble. She'll get you. I like her.
I keep telling her to go to the sidewalks on
I do enjoy Margaret. She's a good person.
I love her. Yeah. Or at least be right exactly behind. What a crew.
Yeah. Richard Nixon.
No, I don't.
Not at all.
And I saw her.
Yeah, you get to speak later. Yeah, okay. Is this on? Well, yes, Bill, thank you. Thank you for the support that we get for bicyclists in Moscow. I think Moscow is a very friendly bicycle place, and it's been getting more so. I particularly appreciate that covered bike rack out there. Been very useful, thank you. And I'd like to remind everybody that this Wednesday is Bike to School Day, and so we might have some people on bicycles who are maybe not the most skillful riders in the world, so watch out. You should always watch out, but watch out especially. And I want to invite you all to Bike to Work Day. We'll be setting up once again on the corner of 6th and Main. We'll have coffee from One World Cafe and treats from Gritman. And you're all welcome to pedal by and get a free coffee and a treat, and I certainly hope to see you there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Margaret. Okay, and then with that, we will move on to item number 1, which is the consent agenda.
I'd move to approve the consent agenda as presented, Your Honor.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion by Jim and a second by Catherine to accept the consent agenda as it is written. I will start the roll with Ann.
Aye.
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 Okay. We will move on to item number 2, staff recognition report. Gary, do you have anything for us this evening, sir?
I believe Tyler Palmer has a presentation to make, Your Honor.
Okay. Good evening, Tyler.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. This will be a little bit of an atypical staff recognition, but I think that one of the reasons it'll be atypical is indicative of the reason that this person was given the award that they were given. We recently had our Public Works Award Luncheon, which is an annual event that we have to recognize some of the accomplishments within the Public Works Department. And at that event, the pinnacle is the presentation of the Public Works Employee of the Year Award, which is a peer-reviewed process, and we always get a lot of submittals. I think we had over 15 people who submitted their peers for the award this year, and it's a really tough process. The write-ups are amazing, as you would expect, from just the work that these people do. And this year, Dan Taff was the recipient. Dan's an operator in our water distribution group. I would have made Dan so miserable that it wouldn't have been worth having the award if I would have made him come here tonight to stand in front of everybody. And so we still wanted to recognize Dan. And to me, the fact that Dan really just doesn't want the limelight that badly is one of the reasons that he's wonderful at his job. The water operators in a city our size, any of our staff that works out in the field, they're jumping from a lot of things. They may be working on a water leak during the day and think they get to go home and see their family, but all of a sudden they get called out because they got to plow snow, or we get torrential rain and we've got floods, and they're back here. And Dan is the kind of employee that just does that day in and day out, and he does it because he cares deeply about his job. He's someone who is a stickler for the rules, but because he wants to make sure that the residents of Moscow have clean drinking water. And so just to make sure that this would make Dan as uncomfortable as possible were he here, the way that type of selfless service to a community, it reminds me a lot, and employees like Dan, it reminds me of the last paragraph from one of my favorite books, Middlemarch. And I'm going to read this, and I'm going to swap genders on the end just in honor of Dan. But it says, "But the effect of his being on those around him was incalculably diffusive. For the growing good of the world is partly dependent on unhistoric acts. And that things are not so ill with you and me as they might have been is half owing to the number who lived faithfully a hidden life and rest in unvisited tombs." Dan's the kind of guy that I'm sure many of people will visit his tomb, but he's going to continually, day in, day out, conduct these acts that most people won't even realize that he's doing for them. But the reason that they can live the quality of life they can is because of the work that he does. And so we wanted to recognize Dan Taff for his great work.
Frequently, ladies and gentlemen, Dan Taff, as well as others that have got awards and have got different certificates and moved on to help move our city forward in whatever department they work in. The neat thing about these employees is they just get the job done. They don't want the recognition. They just move forward and make things happen. And so that's what Dan Taff is all about, as well as others. And so we as a city appreciate having those kind of employees. It makes it special for our town and others. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the next item, which is mayoral appointments. And I have 5 for council's consideration this evening. And I'll go right down through the list. Kelly Kingsland, Farmers Market Commission, he's a produce vendor, expiration 12/31 of 2020. Renisa Wilson, Fair and Affordable Housing Commission, expiration 12/31 of 2021. Steve Bonner, Fair and Affordable Housing Commission, expiration 12/31 of 2021. Sandra Stoops, Arts Commission, expiration 12/31 of 2022. And Robert Casely, Arts Commission, expiration 12/31 of 2021. So I'd entertain a motion from the council on these nominees.
Move to approve those slate of candidates, sir.
Second. Oh, we're all over it. Everybody wants
Yeah,
that one.
everybody wants to.
It's always great.
Ladies
having
first,
people
though.
join.
Brandy, you got it. I got a motion by Jim and a second by Brandy and a tie with Art to approve all 5 candidates. I'll start to roll with Catherine.
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any of those folks here this evening with us? I know Steve's not. Oh, but please stand up and introduce yourself. Would you like to, you can come up and talk if you want. Well, this is, look, I always do this to everybody, so it can be very brief, but we like to see who they are, and then I like to make comments about the folks that work on our commissions.
Okay, well, thank you for all approving me. My name is Benicia Correa Wilson. My family and I moved to Moscow about 1.5 years ago, and prior to that, I had been living in North Jersey, but kind of right outside of New York City, and was a practicing attorney for the past 10 years, but I've done like a lot of city work, working as a city attorney for the past 10 years. So having moved here, I just wanted to help serve the community I'm in now, and hopefully I can do that with this commission and in other ways, so.
Well, Manisha, thank you very much. I appreciate anybody that works, and we've got lots of volunteers in our fine town that volunteer for various commissions. We got a number of them. I think it's 144 or 134. It's a ton of people. But the point that I'm trying to make here is it takes an army to make a village like this to help us go forward. And so we very much appreciate the time and effort you've taken. And a lot of us up here on this yes, myself, Jim Bolin, Art, as well as others, have been served on various commissions through before we ever got to this level of doing things for the city. So anyway, we thank you very much.
Well, I hope I can be of help.
Okay,
So, thank you.
Yep, we look forward to seeing you. Thank you, Manisha. Do I have any others out there? Okay, well, thank you all. We will move on. And now it's item number 4, public comment, mayor's response period, where we allow 15 minutes for folks to get up and tell us what's on their mind, as long as it's not on this evening's agenda or something in front of planning and zoning or the Board of Adjustment. Please come up and tell us what your name is, and we'll give you 3 minutes to talk to us. Okay, well, thank you. We'll move on to item number 5, and that is a commission report, Moscow's Pathways Commission. We got David Schott with us, as well as Jonathan Graydon. I'll let you take it from here, David.
Well, thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, it's my pleasure to welcome back Jonathan Graydon, our chair of the Moscow's Pathways Commission, to do our annual report tonight. I'd like to say that this last year has been really fun with the commission. We've got a bunch of folks that are very passionate and very dedicated to the pathways throughout our city. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Jonathan, and he'll present our annual report. So thank you.
Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Mayor, Council, everybody. Glad to see a bunch of people I recognize and some I don't here. Welcome to new people on the commissions as well. I actually joined, I want to say back in 2014, August, but then we became a full-fledged commission 4 years ago in 2015. So this is pretty impressive. Imposter syndrome is real, but you can also do a lot of goods. With that said, our goal as Pathways, as most of you know, we are function through Parks and Rec, but because people use the Pathways transportationally, we function in this kind of weird hybrid niche. We're off-street pathways. So our mission statement is we promote and advise on the development of a path system in and around Moscow, embracing 3 important community concerns: active transportation, recreation, and resource conservation enhancement. And to that, we have people on our commission who are active bicyclists, myself and Margaret, for example. We have people who are very avid walkers and gardeners, and people who address the aspects related to parks and beautification. We also have people who use it for other functions and stuff as well. I want to give a shout out to David Schott as our staff liaison. Awesome guy. Came here for a couple years ago, was it, from Wyoming. And Donna Howard is our secretary, administrative specialist sort of person. And Ann is our council liaison. So recent accomplishments over the last year, we had the Blackbird Station opening, completion and grand opening. That's across the highway from Eastside Marketplace. It's a little trail station with bike racks, benches, a water fountain. There will be some more plantings that will be growing up, some trees and stuff. The concept was very similar to the trail station on the Latah Trail, or on the Chipman Trail in Pullman. And this was named after John Dickinson, a member of the community who unfortunately I never had the chance to meet, but blackbirds were his favorite bird, as was the song Blackbird by the Beatles. So that's why it was named Blackbird Station. And we had a huge turnout in November. It was pretty chilly. I actually zipped on pant legs for the first time like in a year for that. And that was really cool. We had a bunch of people there, showed up, even some people dropped by as they were riding by. And then we also, earlier in the fall, we had our successful path tour. This one we highlighted, we started at the Intermodal Transit Center and went through what is now where the identity is. We saw the underpass project, which was in the works at the time, and we saw the Blackbird Station almost complete, and we ended at Alturas Park, and we heard some citizen feedback as well during that. We also did our farmers market outreach. We have a couple of display banners and heard from some people concerns about the pathways, lighting, other things, and other just kind of areas we can look at. We also discussed the topic of e-bikes and scooters on the pathways, given the new bike share that's going to be coming to the city. We decided to put forward a recommendation based on the laws in Boise, using that verbiage, adjusted slightly for some legal and technical concerns, but very close to that. We talked about some safety issues, but ways to try to mitigate the safety issues without discouraging alternative non-motorized or non-gasoline motorized transportation. We also had the Idaho 8 underpass completion, and I can announce the grand opening for that will be May 18th, Saturday at 11 a.m. So hope to see you all there. That's at the right where Steiner and White Avenue intersect with Highway 8. The creek goes under the highway and the pathway goes under there. There were some comments during the spring flooding. People seem to think, oh, we didn't account for the flooding. No, when we did the hydrological study, it was meant to flood about a week per year. And this year it flooded a little bit more, but everything flooded this year, as we know. But overall, on average, the graph I have up there, it's a little hard to see, but that is the water gauge reading at the university during the first closure, and it was closed during those about 4 days where we saw the peaks in the action stage. When that gauge is above about 7.4 feet, I want to say, that's when the underpass is flooded. But as soon as it was down, it was reopened again, and they can run a brush through and clear out any debris. So you can see it's back to dry and clear. I also got a small photo of when they were building it. It was kind of cool to see. But anyway, that will be a grand opening. We've already heard from people who have been using it. I've seen a bunch of people walking through, even walked through it a couple nights ago with a friend of mine in a wheelchair, and it was super nice being able to use that rather than trying to cross the highway. Looking ahead, we have pretty much similar goals and aspirations to previous years, but with a few changes. We are looking to continue to research and improve and propose some safety improvements at the road crossings, specifically Blaine, Alturas, Steiner. Right now, we just have stop signs on the pathway, but there's almost no indication on the roads that there is an actual pathway crossing there. There's diamond sign with pedestrian, but that doesn't tell much. I actually recently met, I want to say last week or the week before, with the new chair of the Transportation Commission, Michael Kite, and we were talking about some of these things that would have to go through Transportation Commission, but they're aware of those, so we're getting some interagency cooperation on that, trying to continue to build safety in that aspect, because safety is a huge concern of mine, being mostly bicycle and walking. We're continuing to pursue the underpass at US 95 Main Street here, that's just on the south side of town. Right now, the pathway uses a Sweet Avenue crosswalk, and it's a little dicey. You get people coming down the hill, you're not sure they're gonna stop. We had a University of Idaho engineering student team do a preliminary investigation, and that showed that it was feasible. It would be flooded a few more days than the Idaho 8 underpass, but it was still feasible. And so we're looking to see if we can move forward with grant applications and stuff. By the way, that Idaho 8 underpass, that was, I want to say 90% funded by an Idaho Transportation Alternatives Program grant. The city contributed like 10%, and half of that, I want to say, was Urban Renewal Agency, something like that. So it costs very little to the city, to taxpayers, especially since a lot of the Idaho TAP grant funding comes from Boise and that area. We are also looking at continuing to refresh and update some of the paint, striping, and signage along the pathway, some wayfinding signage. That gets into Transportation's Streets Department as well. But we've heard a lot of good feedback, especially with the center striping through Berman Creekside Park, the edge striping with the little reflective beads. It just increases safety overall. It's cheap to do since we have the equipment to do it in the city. And then we also want to, in the future, gather more precise usage data of the pathways, figure out who's using what, where can we focus improvements better, where there are areas of connectivity that can be better served. Just some generic data like that, because it's been a little while since we've done some of that. We always have a couple questions on the citizen survey, but being able to get some more granular data would be good. Also looking ahead, we want to see about implementing some pathway lighting, especially along Identity and through Berman Creekside Park, because that's a main connection, especially with the underpass connecting to the fairgrounds. As you can see, that was a photo I took a little while ago. It was pitch black back there. I even lightened that photo a little bit, and it's hard to see, especially to get people walking with dogs and stuff. So having some lighting would be ideal, both for safety, for people walking and biking, potentially reduce crime, that sort of stuff like that. We're continuing to want to locate orphan paths and pedestrian rights of way, areas that are off-street connectivity that maybe we can, make official, especially if they're on city property, but just aren't signed that way or aren't noticed. That's just kind of ongoing. And another big deal is being involved earlier in the planning process for new developments. Right now, if you want to build a new development, you got to plan streets, you got to plan utilities. If we can try to incorporate pathways as part of the Parks and Rec overall thing, rather than trying to shoehorn them in later during the development process, that can serve the community much better going forward and be more comprehensive. Anyway, that's most of what we've been doing over the past year and what we're looking forward to. Any questions from council, community, anything?
Jonathan, the Saturday event on the 18th for the underpass, and anybody that drives by that street or goes by that street, that trail, that's been wonderful for people, because that, man, used to be terrible with that gas station, people trying to dart across there. So that has been a huge, huge improvement. And the neat thing about it, we had a flood condition this year. It ain't gonna be any worse than that, I don't think. Anyway, I hope to God it doesn't, because that was a unique, once-in-a-while event that doesn't happen very often, but it came out pretty good, so it held up good, and that was a good test for it. You don't really want to have those kind of tests, but that was something that was
Yeah, I think we were all pleasantly surprised at how well that
I mean,
came
it was
out.
amazing.
And I mean, this was above average. Like it was super
Oh, yeah.
flooded. And I think eventually in the plans, it's not currently budgeted for, but we want to do is a bridge across the creek to Lynn Street, which is a major north-south. So that will connect, up to City Park and elsewhere. So we're continuing to expand that connectivity and trying to make sure everything connects. And yeah, I think with that Idaho 8, the success of that bodes well for future projects like 95 and other potential areas in town as well.
Questions for Jonathan from the council? And you're the liaison. Have you got anything you want to add? Anything John missed or anything?
Thank you.
Jonathan, you guys are going to be very much involved in the two-way bike path here on Third Street, I assume, this spring, and we should.
Not so
bridge-
much.
The bridge should have arrived today, I would think. Was scheduled to arrive today.
It's actually delayed till next Monday.
So that two-way bike path, that's actually transportation because we are strictly off-street pathways. Anything on-street is transportation. Anything that's off-street is pathways. And that two-way facility is technically part of the Third Street corridor. So there is some gray areas, but that specifically is transportation. Although I did talk to Michael with a few concerns and issues I had with that. But yeah, that's the Third Street Bridge. That's a gray area again because it is bike pedestrian only, but it is also on that corridor. I'm not sure how that will all shake out, but we did hear from a bunch of community members, I want to say a year ago, who lived in that area, arguing that they wanted a bike ped bridge rather than the multimodal bridge. And we kind of forwarded their concerns on and took note of those as well. But yeah, jurisdiction's always kind of confusing at times.
But the connectivity is going to dovetail with some of these orphan paths and whatnot, so I hope you guys are continuing to connect with transportation on how the pathways and the streets hook together and.
Oh, yeah,
how they
and
can
I
be.
think Michael and I, we want to continue that, or whoever becomes the chair after him, we want to continue that sort of interfacing because there is a lot of dovetailing in specific issues, and I was glad to have the chance to meet with him a week or two ago. It was a really good baseline meeting.
Brandy, you got a question?
With that bridge, the bike and pedestrian bridge, I like that you were talking about future plans to do some more data gathering for the Pathways users. And when that time comes that you're developing what that's going to look like, it would be great if you would also connect with the Transportation Commission chair to share what your procedure for gathering that data is for those pathways, because I would love to see some data on the users of that bridge too, so there could maybe be some continuity in what's being
Oh, yeah,
measured.
definitely. I don't have specific plans for that data gathering. That was just
Yeah.
kind of a goal, a nebulous goal that we have for now. But yeah, as we get that firm down, definitely because I want the data to be able to be used as broadly as possible and interface with similar data on transportation sides of things.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jonathan.
All right, thank you.
Good presentation. Thank others on the Moscow Pathways Commission as well. Thank you, David. Okay, we will go on to item number 6, the appeal a license denial from Happy Horizons Childcare. Gary Reedner will be presenting this for us.
Thank you, Your Honor. What you have before you tonight is an appeal of the denial of a daycare license. And since it is an appeal, we'll stick to just the facts. So on April 9th, 2019, Connie Salisbury, on behalf of Happy Horizon Childcare applied for a license to operate a daycare business to be located at 1428 South Blaine Street, Real Life Ministries in the East Side Marketplace. Upon review of the daycare application and regulations, it was determined by city staff that Happy Horizons Childcare does not meet the requirements of Moscow City Code, Title IX, Section 10-19.A.2.G, which states in part, the daycare facility shall provide open space for outdoor play. A minimum of 100 square feet per child is required. This area shall be adjacent to the daycare facility and shall provide a safe play area that can be easily maintained and is accessible for use by children. The required open space for outdoor play is not adjacent to the daycare facility as required by code. Because of the failure of the applicant to comply with this regulation, the license was denied. Pursuant to Moscow City Code Title IX, Section 10-15, the applicant filed an appeal of that denial to the City Council. After hearing the appeal, the City Council has the discretion to uphold the denial of the license by the City Clerk or may direct the City Clerk to issue the license upon a finding of good cause. With that, the appellant has been invited to address you. Staff will be available to answer questions as to process after that presentation.
Okay, well, thank you, Gary. And how this will work, as it is an appeal from the applicant, so we will listen to the appellant right now. So Connie Salisbury. So Ms. Salisbury, would you please come up?
If I may, before I step down, this is an aerial photo of the area, and this is the proposed daycare play area, which is outside of the area that the daycare will be
It's the East Side
maintained.
Mall for anybody that's not aware of it. Thank you, Gary.
Okay.
Ms. Salisbury?
You have a PowerPoint presentation, correct?
Yes, she does.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, you can advance the slides with that button. So with that. Okay, and then if you want to use the pointer, it's that little button there. Okay, no problems.
And I'm going to introduce one of our Board of Directors, Dr. Cherish Fisker, who's going to share the presentation with you.
Please pull the microphone just down a little bit for you. You ladies are shorter than what Gary is.
Right
so
there?
There you go. That'd be fine.
Is that better?
That's great. Thank you.
You try it.
Hello. Is that,
Yep, that's great. And you're a doctor. You want to go ahead?
okay, thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor Lambert and distinguished members of Moscow City Council. My name is Cherish Fisker, and I reside at 1077 Larson Road, Moscow, Idaho, 83843. I am a member of the Board of Directors of Happy Horizons Childcare, located at 1428 South Blaine Street, Moscow, Idaho, 83843, in the East Side Marketplace Mall. On behalf of the Board of Directors of Happy Horizons Childcare, we would like to appeal the denial of our application for a daycare facility license, as stated previously. The denial, as stated previously, was based on the lack of open space for outdoor play adjacent to the building of our proposed daycare facility. However, we would like to propose and present a plan for outdoor play space that is near the entrance of the daycare building and on the same property. Our plan will also address and alleviate any safety concerns with this proposed outdoor play space. First, the new daycare, even though it would be operating in the real-life building, is a separate business and operating entity, which has filed for and recently acquired its own nonprofit 501c3 status. The mission statement of Happy Horizons Childcare is to provide nonprofit, high-quality, affordable, and accessible childcare in a safe and educational environment, enabling families of all economic levels to continue or obtain employment or to further their education. Also, precedence has been set for other daycares to have playgrounds that are not adjacent to the facility. These daycares have been approved by City Council previously. The next part of this presentation will focus on pictures of the proposed playground area and how the children will be transported to it. This picture is a photo of the child care check-in area. As you can see, it is quite large and open for the children to be checked in. The path that they would take to the outdoor playground space would entail exiting the daycare lobby into the mall common area. As you can see, the daycare lobby area is separated from the mall common area by sliding doors, and they would follow the ramp down through the mall common area, which is all indoors. As they continue through the mall, they would exit through two sets of doors. The area of concern is the crosswalk area. It is important to note that although this is a roadway, it is a roadway in a parking lot and not a busy street. The daycare would make sure that all the children and the two cross guards that would accompany the children would all wear orange reflective vests. The leader cross guard as well as the end cross guard person would also carry flags through the crosswalk area. The daycare would make sure that speed limits are posted throughout that crosswalk area for cars. We would also have child at play signs and the little children plastic cutouts that have the flags to help post would also be reflective and easily seen for cars as they go through the area, but to secure that the children would cross through securely. An important area of the crossing area is the placement of two stop signs. They are on either side of the walkway. The children will be taken out to the playground in shifts, thereby meeting the minimum 100 square feet of play space per child. As can be seen in the picture, the proposed playground area is 2,634 square feet. And you can see through the picture the grassy area where the playground would be. The play area would be fenced if the request is approved, all through the grassy area. Age-appropriate playground equipment would be installed and building code requirements would be met. The playground will not be open to the public when it is being used by the daycare. However, signage will be posted on available use times for the public when the daycare is closed. Next, we would like to invite a young woman, Alyssa Knight, who would like to testify to the need of this daycare. Okay. I'm sorry, I believe she had to leave. Her young son was with her. So, in conclusion, we would please ask that City Council approve the outdoor play space for the proposed daycare and accept our application for a daycare facility license. We would also like to ask for permission to use the indoor playground until the outdoor playground is ready. Finally, our goal is to support the community, and we would like to provide quality, affordable daycare in a centralized location to assist parents living and/or working in Moscow. Thank you so much for your time, attention, and consideration.
Any questions, questions for the applicant? Art?
Partly the applicant, second, but first staff.
Okay.
First of all, a comment that we desperately need good daycare, and I commend you guys for stepping forward and trying to set one up. But relative to staff and the procedure with City Council and the Board of Adjustment is that the application went to the Board of Adjustment on the 4th of April. It was heard on the 9th of April. There was a letter of denial on the 10th that came out. But according to what I saw in the documentation we were provided, there was no mention of outdoor play space at the time the application was submitted or when the Board of Adjustment heard the case. The issue of outdoor play spaces come up now, subsequent to the denial of the application. So does this represent new evidence outside of what the Board of Adjustment considered and heard? And is it legit to be hearing that now at City Council as part of the appeal?
That's a good question, Art. Gary?
This is the clerk's duty to issue the daycare license. The zoning compliance would be handled by the Zoning Board of Adjustment. So this would not be, I would consider, would be pertinent to the issuance of the license, not necessarily the use of the property.
Two separate issues?
Yes.
Yeah, so enlighten me a little bit more, because the Board of Adjustment is the action being appealed here, and their action was based on no outdoor play space.
Art, I'll stop you right
Yeah.
there, because actually this is based on the denial of the license. It has nothing to do with the Board of Adjustments, what we're hearing in front of us, according to this.
Your Honor,
What? Yes.
if I may clarify, this has not gone to the Board of Adjustment for consideration of approval. This issue needed to be addressed first before they proceeded. If the license was going to be denied based on noncompliance with the daycare regulations, then there was no point taking it to the Board of Adjustment. So it has not gone to the Board of Adjustment yet. So this appeal is just based on the city's licensing requirements for daycare facilities.
Okay, cool. So, second one, back to you. Relative to the fencing off of the play space, the green space in front of the mall there has sidewalks on either side to facilitate pedestrian movement from cars that are parked there through to the entrance of the mall without having pedestrians walk out in the traffic lanes. Which side of the sidewalk is the fence going to be on?
Inside, all around the inside.
Within the
around.
grassy area.
So it's on the grassy area, but not the sidewalk area?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, because your picture shows a circular space that we had in our packet. It showed a circular space,
Okay.
and I was curious how you were going to fence that off, and some of it's out on the asphalt, and some of it's on this concrete, and some of it's in the grass, and
Okay.
how are you, is the fence gonna be a circular fence, like in the picture, or it would just be in the triangular, little mall space there where, public events?
Ms. Salisbury, please come up here if you're going to answer the question so we can hear what you're saying, please.
I'm not sure what you're referring to, what circle.
It
But
was on Gary's map.
If you look at the map that was in our packet, it shows us, where the outdoor play space would be, and it's a big circle that expands out into would take up a bunch of parking spaces and whatnot, and that seemed kind of
It's just on the inside
odd.
of that picture, in the ground.
Would just be in the triangular
Yeah, and
portion.
there's 2,600 square feet inside that.
Yeah, it seemed like there was,
Yeah, if I may, I think
Ample
that
space.
circle was just submitted to show the area where the play area was going to be.
but not specifically where.
No.
It was just which county it's in.
Okay.
Yeah, because it shows kind
So,
of
yeah, that's
the-
that just indicates the general area where it's going to be.
Yes, perfect, thank you.
No problem.
Did that answer that?
Yeah, I was just curious if
It
you were
won't
gonna
remove-
try to fence that circular
Won't
area.
remove any sidewalks.
Okay, other questions for the
I have-
applicant, Catherine?
So you mentioned that you're always going to bring crossing guards, which are the daycare providers that are walking with, and the orange vests. And then you said you're going to take the kids in shifts.
If there's too many children to have 100 square feet per child.
Right, so how does that 2,600 square feet divide up? So how many would you bring in a shift of kids?
15 or 20, probably.
Okay. Aged is 3 through 6?
Our age is newborn through 5, up to kindergarten, but you probably wouldn't take newborn out, but.
Okay. And then, so when you're talking about building play structures and all that kind of stuff, then you're going to make it only appropriate for that age group?
Yeah.
And so what height of fence do you have to have?
4 feet.
Only 4
By
feet?
code, I talked to Justin Goodwin. He told me it had to be 4 feet, yeah. And it will have a gate, so.
Yeah, that we'd lock and
Yes.
do all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
And then, I thought that question was good, so it's not going to go outside the green space. And then, are you going to be taking the trees down or anything like that?
We believe we won't need to take any trees down. We're going to try to make all the structures fit
Fit within
around
that
them and
area?
within the trees.
Okay.
It's wonderful shade, right there.
I have a question regarding the ownership of that piece.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether you own the space inside the mall or whether you lease it or in this outdoor space, what the ownership lease arrangement is, and is that something that's concurrent with your other lease so that someone couldn't come along, if an ownership in the property changed, they couldn't take that away from you?
No, we will be leasing the interior classrooms in addition to the play space.
Okay, and there'll be simultaneous leases, so one
Yeah.
can't.
There'll be
expire.
one lease for both, I believe.
Terrific, thank you.
Do you have a question, Phil?
Yeah, so I also want to, agree with what Art said, that the need is certainly there, and I love your mission statement and everything. I think also where you talked about it being available to the public outside of the daycare hours, during the daycare, it sounds like you have a very complete plan with the crossing guards and the flags and the kids wearing the vests. Outside of those times, there's playground equipment that's open to children of that age, that's right adjacent to parking lots without the amount of oversight that you're able to provide. That's, I guess, concerning a little bit. There wouldn't be someone to make sure those kids drawn into there that are not going to be meeting all their requirements
Yeah.
that you have and can be darting in
Hopefully
and
their
out from that
parents
fence.
take them
Right.
into the area.
That would be the hope.
But we can't regulate
Right.
that. If you prefer that we not open it to the public, it's your choice.
Well, I have another question that's probably for staff. I mean, just to try to be very objective about the word adjacent, and have there been a history of other daycares having been approved without that? Was it before that requirement?
The two that we were able to determine going through the records was in May of 2008. Small Steps Daycare applied for a daycare license for the building, old Goodwill building that is now rented by the Storm Cellar Group, and they applied for an appeal to the council to instruct the city clerk to issue that daycare license as well, because they did not have access to an outdoor play area. Council at that time did uphold the appeal and declare or direct the clerk to issue the license. That was a 2-year CUP. That was a CUP that was issued by the Zoning Board of Adjustment at that time. I have no idea why that daycare is not still in business. Then in 2009, just like home daycare, which was located and may still be there at the Creekside Apartments, they had a play area that you had to cross a parking lot, I believe it was about 100 to 150 feet across to get to an outside area for play. Council again voted to direct the clerk to issue that license as well on a finding of good cause shown.
Usually in a daycare environment, children are taken out at least 3 times a day. do you foresee that being easily done? And with the staffing to maintain that kind of opportunity for the kids to be outside?
The staffing would be the same staff they would have in the classroom, which is appropriate for how many and age-wise, and they would go with them, plus the additional crossing guards, some other adults.
So you have enough so that everybody goes, and if some people stay, then you still have people inside the building with those children?
Yeah, with.
You don't have to all go?
Oh, no, they don't. They'll each have their own classroom with their own appropriate teachers and
Oh, okay.
aides, and, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. You have a question?
Yeah, I saw on the application there was some to be determined components. What's your ideal number of staff and your ideal capacity of children for the
Well,
facility?
our ratios will be according to city code, and we don't know how many applicants we'll have yet to be there. But we applied to be a large daycare, which I believe is 41 and more. And we hope we start a little smaller to get accustomed to, get the bugs out a bit, first. And then the space will hold probably 60 children, at least.
Okay, so if you're at 40, you're saying about 15 at a time, so you're looking at 3 or 4 shifts per,
Technically, with 2,600 square feet, we could take out 20 to 25 children at a time, but that seems like a bit much to me. So I like the smaller groups.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
thank you.
it's
Let's,
just thinking about the numbers, I'm sorry. It's just, so if you have all those different classrooms and then you're going to be taking them out in the shifts, are you going to keep the age, are you going to allow the multi-age groups to all play together? Or are you going to take only one group out at a time?
A 3 and 4-year-olds could be together, 4 and 5s could be together.
Okay.
I would not take out 2 to 5s probably at one time.
Okay.
Too big of an age span there.
Thanks, sorry.
well, thank you. I think we've asked the questions. If we have more questions, we'll bring you up.
Thank you.
And I'll turn it
Very
over to
much.
council to
I'll
talk and
start.
deliberate. Go ahead,
Um,
Mark.
Yeah, it seems we do need daycare. This seems to be well thought out. Understanding that the procedures are in the right order and that it's not going to disrupt pedestrian safety in the mall with people walking through the aisles. The fence will be on the inside of the sidewalks, and that will be not disruptive. And the path for the students seems to be well thought out, and I don't have a problem with this.
Ann, did you?
Yeah, based on my experiences and what I've seen, that's not a very well utilized space currently too. And the parts that are utilized will remain intact, which are the sidewalks. And so if there's a better use for that, I like the idea.
I would say, I have to say that I commend the city clerk for noticing that was a basis for denial of the license, but I think the basis has been very well addressed by these people, and therefore I would support it, and I would move that we go ahead and grant the license for this daycare based on the presentation that we've seen.
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion by Jim and a second by Art to approve this daycare license. Further discussion with it? Do you actually want to say something, Brad?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know at what stage this is addressed, if the appeal is upheld, but I just still have concerns about the space being open to the public in that location without the oversight that they are prepared to provide for the daycare children. So I know you said that you could make it not available to the public, and I don't know if others agree with that, and what is the stage to make that determination? Art has something to say.
Yeah, I just comment that denying use of the facility to the public after hours, I think would likely create something like an attractive nuisance where people are going to hop the fence anyway because, Mommy, I want to go play. And, all right, we'll lift you over the fence. And that makes it even worse than having it available for open access. And sometimes, Darwin has to triumph here. Parents have got to look after their offspring and make sure they're not doing something they ought not to be. So I prefer the idea of easy in and out and parental supervision
I think too, with the area for play that's inside the mall, this looks like it's part of that. Most people will be unaware that it's probably belongs to the daycare and utilize it. So to me, they are gonna have a lot of wear and tear on their equipment, but it sounds like they understand that responsibility.
I wonder if some of the concern could be mitigated by possibly asking for something like a taller fence or specifying good signage. Because I understand your concern, and I wonder if, because the playground equipment is designed for such young children, that having something that was maybe harder to access, I don't know, just a thought.
I'm not sure either, and I see what you're saying, Art. You don't want to make it so hard to access that then it's dangerous for the people that are determined to get into it, but it could appear like it's a park, a playground, like any other.
I think that's where
Parkware.
the signage comes in, just good signage at the gates.
Your Honor, if I may.
Gary?
The question here is whether and I would ask the council to consider restating the motion. The council's action is to direct the city clerk to issue the license on the basis of good cause shown. Whether the equipment, whether the play area is open to the public when the daycare isn't using it is irrelevant to the discussion of for good cause shown. If zoning board of adjustment wants to address that when the conditional use permit is applied for, they certainly can do that if that's relevant to their determinations. But you're being asked to determine whether, for good cause shown, you are going to direct the city clerk to issue the license because it meets the intent of the code.
So would you like to?
Well, I would amend the motion, but first I want to say that if the applicant is going to open this to the public, I'm sure they're cognizant of the fact that they assume the liability and the wear and tear on the equipment, and they're willing to take that risk, or they have talked to their insurance company about whether that's something that a risk they're willing to take on. So, but it's not city property, so that's really not an issue for us. But I would amend the motion if you'd like and change the language of it to say that we would like to grant the license based on a finding of good cause. And
And Art seconds, is that good for you, Gary?
Yep,
Yes.
that'll work.
Okay, I'm going to start the roll with Catherine.
Aye.
Aye.
all right,
All right,
Aye.
Okay, you got your license. So thank you very much. Okay, we will move on now to item number 7, Local Highway Safety Improvement Program, 6th Street Pedestrian Improvements. Gary, you have this one, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. As was reported to the Public Works Finance Committee at their last meeting over 2 weeks ago, we're talking about Local Highway Safety Improvement Program, 6th Street Pedestrian Improvements. This is a program that was granted to the city. It was for improvements on 6th Street that included reconstructing pedestrian ramps, curb gutter, and sidewalks, trying to improve pedestrian access across 6th Street. We were given that grant as reported to Public Works Finance at that time. The bids that came in were well in excess of the amount of grant funds that were available for the project. Because of timing and the fact that the ITD board was meeting, this was brought forward. ITD or LTAC wanted a letter from the city indicating that, recommending that ITD or LTAC reject the bids as they were, again, exceeded the amount of funds available for the project. And I discussed with the mayor, a letter was then issued over my signature asking them to please reject the bids. It was one of those things that ITD felt that it was very pertinent for the grantee, the city, to be able to weigh in on that. So we did that, reported that back to Public Works Finance. There were some choices that needed to be made at that time. There were 3 different things that could have happened. One, they could have gone ahead with try to rebid it As you know, the bid climate in March and April usually get bids that are way higher than the funds that you have, so that was rejected. Then we could have combined it with the A Street project to be constructed in 2020. That could have been done, but it would have involved adding significant amounts of local match to that project because it would have had to be added into the A Street project. So that was determined not to be the way to go. The other thing was to combine the project with the 3rd Street LSIP projects for construction in 2021. It will take a little bit of extra match money to bid those together. However, the economies of scale for making a bigger project out of the 3rd Street project plus the 6th Street project will allow significant savings, we hope, in mobilization costs, and because quantities are higher, we should be able to get competitive bids. It also allows the project to be bid at a better time of year than March or April of the construction season. So with that, ITD again asked for a letter in support of that, discussed that with the mayor, and that was issued as well. So what we're looking for at this time, because those were grants, or it is a grant that was granted to the city, we're looking for ratification of the actions of staff after consultation with the mayor of sending those letters to ITD and combining the 6th Street LSIP project with the 3rd Street LSIP project for construction in 2021.
Okay, questions for Gary?
Seems pretty straightforward to me. Better economy of scale and we'll probably save the difference on mobilization costs of whoever bids the project, so.
Yeah, we heard this back at the Public Works and Finance Committee meeting a couple weeks ago, and thought it was a good idea then. I still think it is now.
Okay, well,
I would move ratification to reject the bids for the 6th Street pedestrian improvements and combine that project to be bid with the 3rd Street safety improvement phases 1 and 2 in FY 2020/2021.
Second.
okay, we've got a motion by Art and a second by Jim for ratification and rejection of the bids of the 6th Street pedestrian improvements and combining the projects to be bid with the 3rd Street safety improvements phases 1 and 2 in FY year 2020/2021. Further discussion, we're all good on this? I'll start with Ann then.
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Okay, we've got the rejection approved. Thank you, Gary. Okay, item number 8, sustainability report. Tyler Palmer has got a presentation for us this evening. Hello again, Tyler.
Hi, Mr. Mayor, Council, happy to be here to talk about one of our favorite topics, the sustainability measures that we have engaged in as a city. During a strategic planning session, this was something that the council had expressed an interest in hearing a little bit more and kind of a more comprehensive view of some of the sustainability activities that the city is engaging in. And the city has a number of programs that have proved very successful, and it's something that we're really proud of, a lot of the work that's been done. I think sustainability is a field that there's always more that we can do, and that's something that we always try and look for is the opportunities to make sure that we're behaving in as responsible a way as we can. One of the things that a lot of cities as we go around the country even are surprised at is that a city our size has a dedicated environmental services group. The City of Moscow's Environmental Services Group was formed in 2016, and their charge is to look at sustainability issues, to make sure that we're complying with our environmental regulations, that we are looking at water conservation, sustainability, greenhouse gas emissions, all of these things that are so important to the operations of the city. And I have a few members of the Environmental Services Group here with me tonight. They're mostly here so that when I bumble things and can't answer questions appropriately, they can step in and save me. And so I've got Nicole Baker. Nicole is our Sustainability and Water Conservation Coordinator. We've got Ty Thompson, who's the Environmental Compliance Coordinator, and Kelly Cooper, who's the Environmental Education Specialist and the AmeriCorps Sustainability Technician for the City of Moscow. And they all do just amazing work. Kyle Steele, who wasn't able to be here tonight, he's off floating a river fishing somewhere, is our environmental services supervisor for that group. So I'm going to run through in as quick a fashion as I can, and I will certainly leave time for any questions that you might have as we proceed through this presentation. Looks like our screen froze. I've got technical help
Thanks,
coming.
Zach.
There we go. All right, we're back. Okay, we're in. All right, thanks, Zach. So, I'll run through these. I'll certainly leave time for questions, and try and provide any clarity that I can. In 2007, the city of Moscow pledged to join the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, which is known as ICLEI, and made a climate protection pledge as they joined that organization. ICLEI is an organization that really focuses on sustainability at a local level. Their software is immensely helpful as we try to do things like greenhouse gas emission studies and inventories. In 2010, there was adoption of a council goal of a 20% reduction of the 2005 greenhouse gas levels by 2020. In 2013, there was a reconfirmation of said goal. And the baseline at that point was updated to 2008. And the main reason that the baseline was changed from 2005 to 2008 is that there was a software upgrade and we had far better data available for 2008. And so we were able to better quantify what that level should be. And so that's why 2008 was adopted as the new threshold for our target. And then more recently in 2018, we had the revenue neutral carbon fee and dividend policy, which was a support statement that the mayor and council supported and was passed just toward the end of last year. So in response to that goal, the staff in the city, we've taken on a number of measures in an attempt to reduce the city's greenhouse gas emissions. I'm going to go through some of the examples of things that we've done and give a few examples within each of these. There are certainly more examples within each of these categories, but I'll just try and hit some highlights. Traffic signal upgrades was a big one. We were able to get a grant and we were able to go through and replace our traffic signals to LED signals. That made an enormous difference. We had a 9% reduction just in our electrical use, just solely based on that. If you think about traffic signals, it's a bigger light. You know, I don't know how many of you have seen a signal head on the ground. They seem a lot smaller when they're up there on the mast arm, but they actually sit pretty high. They're almost 4 feet tall, big bulbs in those, and so transitioning to the LEDs was a significant saving. One of the things you'll notice as we go through this list is, and it's one of the things I like about approaching sustainability as a city, is that we do have to take a systems view of all of this, that everything we do has an impact. And so there are things that you wouldn't really think about that are really, really important. And so this next item is one of those, a variable frequency drive on our water system. What a variable frequency drive is basically like a dimmer switch on a light switch. If you don't have one of those, it's either the pumps that pump our water are either all the way on or all the way off. And so when they're called for, they hit at 100% power, and then when they're off, and they shut off. And so it's a lot harder on the pumps, first and foremost, but the big impact is on our energy consumption. Because with a variable frequency drive, it's like a dimmer switch. We can ramp up to the level that we need to be at. We can ramp back down and idle at levels rather than kicking on and off, which draws far more electricity. So that has a huge impact. You know, our biggest generators of greenhouse gas emissions as a municipality are, without a doubt, our water system and our sewer system. Our wastewater treatment, our water reclamation and reuse facility, and then our water generation and distribution are our biggest contributors. We've had a lot of upgrades throughout the city. We've done some sustainability surveys and inventories at several different city facilities. And so this includes looking at just changing over light bulbs to LED lights. You know, the University of Idaho recently had a project, and they have so many, and they saw a really significant reduction. Well, we saw a similar thing, obviously on a smaller scale, but we've gone through almost all of our facilities now and done this review. The Hamilton Low Aquatic Center, the boiler replacement there, that was a big item. You know, all of these things that really contribute to our energy usage and therefore our greenhouse gas emissions. Our fleet reduction, I think most of you are pretty familiar with our Eco Driver program. That's been functioning since 2012. And that's been a highly successful program for us. We saw a 15% reduction in the fleet sector from our 2008 numbers, largely based on our efforts through that program. And I'll get a little bit more into that here in a little bit. So if you look at this graph, I know it's a little bit hard to see the details on this, and I'm happy to send this to whomever might want to see it. It shows the years and the inventories and the different amount of contribution toward our total greenhouse gas comes from each of those sectors. And so as you can see, we're trending in a pretty good direction. We're currently sitting 13.5% underneath our 2008 levels. In 2018, we'll have a benchmark inventory that will complete this for the 2018 this year, and so we'll have an update for 2018 as we go through that.
Tyler? Sorry to interrupt. I have a question. What accounts for the water wastewater treatment facility fluctuation from 12-14 to 18?
So, and I'll have Kelly step in if I say this wrong, but in part, the way that our electricity gets calculated changed. And so electricity is the major contributor to that. And Kelly, did you want to provide more detail? Is that accurate? You'll have to
Come on up, Kelly, to the podium, please.
So the way that the greenhouse gas is calculated for electricity use has to do with these statistics that are called EGRD statistics. And they're numbers that the EPA puts out that actually put an amount of CO2, methane, and nitrous oxide that are emitted per every kilowatt hour that of electricity that is used. So, and those numbers are put out every 2 years, which happens to coincide with our inventories. So as those numbers change, which are based regionally, including Washington, Idaho, Oregon, California, most of the western U.S., as those change, our contribution changes. So even though we are using less, we are highly dependent on those EGRD statistics. Does that make sense?
Sort of.
Can we not use statistics from our, obviously Avista provides all of the power that comes here, so can we not use their mix of power generating?
We can use their
facilities?
mix, but we don't have those specific statistics for the amounts that are put out for every kilowatt hour that they use.
So you'd need the spreadsheet that the other.
Yeah, we would basically need
Thing
what
is-
they report to the EPA, which is still going to vary year by year depending on their exact mix per year of what they use coming out of the coal plant versus what they use from hydroelectric power.
So what you're saying is that our kilowatt usage is changing to some degree, but mostly it's what they're measuring each okay.
So as upgrades to the grid happen, as upgrades to power plants happen, we also get that benefit.
Would you say it's pretty consistent then, our usage across those years?
For the wastewater treatment plant, it is.
Yeah, okay.
Most of our energy savings has been in traffic lights and street lights, as well as buildings and facilities.
Thank
as
you.
far as energy reduction.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask because that seems like the biggest change when you're looking at this graph.
Thanks, Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we have several ongoing programs that we continue to run. I mentioned the EcoDriver program. We were seeing about a 4% increase annually in our fuel consumption. Our 2012 is when we initiated the program. Our baseline year was set at 2011. We used 56,918 gallons. I really didn't think we'd ever get underneath 50,000. Our goal was really, we'd hoped to be able to halt the 4% increase annually and try and flatline that number. And so we were very pleasantly surprised when we've been able to continually decrease that number. Obviously we'll have some fluctuation based on how heavy a snow year we get. We saw a big spike in April with the flood. We have a lot of equipment out running around to a lot of places, and so we'll see more fuel use. But, you know, largely this has been driven by staff training and then a number of different components of this program, which include a low use review. We conduct a low use review for vehicles once every 3 years. In that review, we set a threshold for use of a vehicle, and if it doesn't reach that threshold, then we send out a justification form to departments and ask them to look at if it's a piece of equipment. 1, do we need it? 2, if we do need it, can it be combined with another piece of equipment? Through that process, we have combined a number of different pieces of equipment. For example, we had 4 units in the streets department, 2 of which were used during the summer and 2 were used during the winter. 2 of them were used for anti-icing, and then 2 of them were used during the summertime for summer activities, and with some slight modifications to those vehicles, we were able to take 4 to 2. Community development reduced the number of vehicles that they use. And so that's been a really successful process. We also run all of our staff through driver training just to talk about good driving practices. You know, just things that'll save fuel, making sure that our tires are properly inflated, that we're not having jackrabbit starts and hard stops, and all of these just common driving practices that for an individual it makes a difference, but it might not be as noticeable. But when you have, you know, a couple hundred units in a fleet, it becomes noticeable. Every little gallon helps us save through that process. And just asking people to plan trips, to think about how we're traveling and what we're doing, and you know, encouraging folks to consider walking and bike commuting and those sorts of things. And so that's been a very successful program for us. I touched on this a little bit. And so, you know, despite our fleet being larger by over a dozen units since 2012, we've added more than a dozen units. We've seen continued decreases from our 2011 benchmark year. One of the things that we're really excited about is that this year, for the first time, we'll be purchasing hybrid vehicles for our police cruisers. That is going to have an enormous impact, and we really appreciate our police department working with us through this process, because that alone, at full change out of our fleet of our police vehicles, our patrol vehicles, we project will save about 10,000 gallons of fuel annually. Just by making that changeover. You know, when you look at the necessary use of a police vehicle, inherently there's some idle time, a lot of stop time, and then, you know, stop and go. And so it's something that really lends itself well to a hybrid, where the gas motor shuts off during those conditions and isn't sitting there running. And so we're really excited. That's something that we will be bringing forward and proposing in the FY20 budget. And so the next cruisers, with passage of the council of that budget, will be hybrid units, and so that's a pretty exciting development.
Tyler, was that 10,000 gallons once the entire fleet is replaced?
Yeah, once we have all of our patrol units replaced, we anticipate about 10,000 gallons.
How long do you think it will take to replace the whole fleet?
So we replace about 2 per year. We ended up, because of the ordering order and because we anticipated that change, we have 3 in a couple of years, and so we have 12 units. So generally, it would take us 6 years to get through the units. We've got these now. With the current vehicles, we've got them on a 7-year rotation, is what we try and keep them at. You know, you have a lot of money into a police vehicle. You know, you get the base vehicle, and then you have a lot of hours and a lot of specialized equipment that go into them. And our police have been really great at working with us to try and prolong that life as much as possible. When we had the Crown Victorias, we were at a 5-year rotation, and we pushed that to 6 years, and now we're on a 7-year rotation. And so that's really been a cost savings for us in that regard.
In addition to that, we've got to have these staggered so that you have the depreciation as you're rolling along. You can't have everything come due at one time, kind of like we ran into with the fire trucks. You need to be able to space them out so it makes sense from a dollar and cent standpoint, but it's going to take us a while to get there, but we will get there. And it's like chipping away at it. You got to continue on this
Well,
stuff.
and you know, one of the great things that I think with Moscow is that it's municipal government's hard to fund. We all have that in our face all the time. It is terribly difficult. You know, we always are making really tough budget decisions. I don't envy you guys the job that you have to do as you look at those, because there's always a lot of competing priorities that we would love to fund. But one of the things I appreciate is, despite that, in being a small city with a lot of property that isn't on our tax roll, Moscow's shown a willingness to be a guinea pig with certain things. We've taken the lead on a lot of these things, and we've led the way out the gate. We're not sitting around waiting for everybody else to try something out. If we do our homework, and if we have conviction about something, we try and move forward and do the right thing, do the responsible thing. I should mention in this, don't tell the police yet, but annually we have our Eco Driver of the Year award that either goes to a department or an individual, and the police department will actually be awarded on Friday with the Eco Driver of the Year award for their willingness to look at this and make this transition. Water conservation, we talked a little bit about the water system being such a huge generator of our greenhouse gas emissions, and so obviously then water conservation becomes a big part of that. If we don't have to pump a gallon of water out of the ground and then pump it through our distribution system, then that's a gallon of water that's a lot of electricity that we save, and just additional maintenance and repair. And so that's our conservation systems or programs are very important programs for us. Obviously, the biggest reason is because we have a declining aquifer, and we don't have water to be wasting. And so I won't get into a lot of details of this program, as you're all fairly aware of this, but we do have a toilet rebate program. We've had a lot of success, a lot of use, and you can see that the use has been spiking. So it's been a very popular program, both commercial, multifamily, and single family. We recently upgraded the fixtures in City Hall, and that was a fun project to get into, trying to make sure that we maintain the historic feel of the building, but thought pretty important that we're practicing what we preach in that regard. One of them that was really fun and interesting, that we've actually exported a report that we did on this to quite a few municipalities throughout the country, is our Yscape aspects of the conservation program. So we have a lawn rebate program, but we also, in the City Hall Yscape, which is right outside, we tracked not just water usage, but we tracked all of the inputs that went into the grass versus the Yscape. So not only did it use 78% less water, but when you look at the pounds of CO2 here on this bottom graph, that's the difference between the Yscape. And those are actual numbers pulled off of our grass and the inputs that went into it in the Yscape. When you think about things like lawnmowers and edgers and transporting that equipment to the sites, the watering that goes into those sites, it makes a huge difference. And so those are some of those things you really wouldn't think about as a contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, but as we do those sorts of things, that makes a difference for our greenhouse gas. So I talked about how we're at 13.5%. We all know that we're in 2019, and so we're coming up on our 2020 where we had a 20% goal. Some of the things that we're looking at that could have a significant impact, the biggest one is this LED streetlight upgrade. We're working with a couple groups. There looks like there may be even some grant monies available, and we're trying to aggressively change out streetlights. As we've changed out streetlights, we've changed them to LEDs for several years now, and so. On the city streetlight network, any of them that we have that we change out, we've gone to LED. But we're looking to have a more aggressive program to get after this LED change out and try and get all of the lights on the city system changed out to LEDs. We're going to continue with, we've got an alternate fuel transition plan that Fleet has been working on for about the last 6 months. Again, it's something we really have to vet out. We have to be very careful because we just don't have a lot of fluff in a budget to make missteps. And so it's something we have to be very careful with. But we have a pretty aggressive alternate fuel transition plan that identifies vehicles that are good targets for EVs. The city currently owns one completely electric vehicle. And we have several targeted over the next few years that we think would be good vehicles to transition to electric vehicles. And then, as we mentioned, we have the hybrids that will start coming in the police operations. We've done some looking at alternate energy sources for city facilities. It's something that's been talked about quite a bit through the Sustainable Environment Commission. Looking at things like, is solar for the pool an option? And so Parks continues to have those conversations in the facilities group to see what can be possible in that area. We've got it in the budget proposal to expand the City Hall Yscape. We'll be expanding it a little bit this year out toward the area in between the bus shelter, around the bus shelter and the green space that's still out the south side of City Hall. And then in the FY20 budget, we will have some monies to expand the Yscape to the area where the flagpole is. So it'll kind of finish that front side of City Hall. So we'll have two of the frontages of City Hall will be Yscaped at that point. We're retrofitting fixtures in city facilities, light fixtures, plumbing fixtures, et cetera. And this is the other really big one, is that we've got budgeted in the water budget to pursue variable frequency drives on several of the wells. And that and the LED streetlight upgrade are two big chunks that with those, we think that we may just hit the 20% when we get those projects through. So we're in pretty good shape, you know, considering where we've been and where we're going. I think that we've got a plan moving forward that will approach, if not achieve, our 20% goal. I've got a few things. I'm just going to breeze through these really quick. Just environmental things, sustainability things that we're working on. We've got a stormwater utility study that's currently underway. As I think the council is aware, we are anticipating a permit for our stormwater, which means that we'll have to take a far more active role in monitoring and taking care of our stormwater systems, and we're really excited to get that going. It's the right thing to do. We need to do it, and we're happy to do it. So that's in phase 2, which is generating what that might look like. We've got the Environmental Stewardship Award Program, which has just recently been adopted by council, and we are getting all of our ducks in a row to roll out. And this is something that we've been working on for a couple years, and we're really excited about this. This was generated at council's direction when we came with the FOG program, the Fats, Oils, and Grease program. The council asked us to come up with an incentive program. Through that process, we decided that rather than stick just with the sewer side of things, that we would try and expand it and have it be all things sustainability. And so through this program, we also plan to apply this program to city facilities. And so the city facilities will go through an audit against the measures in the environmental stewardship program so that we hold ourselves accountable with this program. So this has a lot of components, things that deal with electrical usage, things that deal with water usage, storm water. It deals with fog with the sewer system. There are a whole bunch of components, and we've already got several businesses that have committed to be early adopters of this program, so we're really excited to kick this off. That runs through a little bit more of that. And a couple tiers, I think the council probably will remember from when we talked about that. And then our chemical weed control alternative, we're really looking at chemical usage across the city, and so we've got that unit just started being used this week. So they're going to be out and about using that piece of equipment. And so we're excited. We're really going to be closely tracking the outcomes, get a lot of good before and after pictures, and so that we can document that. We were actually contacted by a university in the state of Texas today. I don't know how they heard that we were doing it, but asking about this and how it was going in the program.
This is the new steamer you're talking about.
That's right,
They
yeah,
use the steam rather than any pesticides, herbicides, so that we can control weeds throughout the city.
That's right, Your Honor.
Okay, that is an exciting thing to see. I'm very interested in how we end up with that.
Yeah,
as
we'll
we
put
go
together a
along.
good report on that. We'll track it really well and make sure that we can bring back a decent report on how that goes. You know, we're guinea pigs in our area, so we'll see how it works, but we're cautiously optimistic about that one. And this is just images from that. So that's all that I had for you tonight, and with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
One of the things, Tyler, you know, as we're going along, we're trying to attain the various goals for greenhouse emissions and getting where we need to be. And as is very evident to me, we just need to consistently plug away at it and improve as we go along. That's how you're going to get improvements. You're never going to make this thing happen all at once. It's going to take a while to do it, but as we go on, then you don't slip back. You add a few more things on, just like the hybrid police cars. Those things, once we get in place, and it takes time to do this, but we're making some great strides. And so these reports, I love seeing these reports to see where we're at, so we can talk to our citizens about what we are actually doing. So, questions for Tyler? Good
No,
report.
I would say that was very helpful, and I know that we had asked during that strategic planning workshop, you know, to hear everything that's been going on, so that when we go back again to that process and we're trying to decide what our challenge areas are and what we're going to tackle, we have the background that you provided with us as we move forward with what our goals are going to be. So thank you.
Welcome.
Good report, Tyler. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that is the end of our regular agenda, so we will go into reports. And I'll start with you, Jim.
Historic preservation has been postponed till May 30th, and so I don't really have very much, other than I was at a Rendezvous in the Park meeting prior to this meeting, and an issue that came up was that we're paying, that organization is paying fees to the city, and they waive the banner fee every year, but that organization, which was initiated by the city, is still paying for the park services and the alcohol licensing permit, and I'd like to bring forward at some point, some way that we might pay for that through the 1% for arts, or maybe the legislative discretionary funds of this. So it's not a budgetary issue, but we could figure out some way to pay for that, because it's a small amount for the city, but it's $500 or $600 is a big deal to Rendezvous in the Park. So I'm going to be bringing that forward to committee at some point here. That's all I have.
Arthur?
Didn't have much going on. Did take a ride along with the police department last Friday night, and it's always interesting to talk with the officers about their outlook and concerns of what goes on in the city, and that is something I would encourage all of us to do at some point, to do a ride along. It's very beneficial and very educational. All the other stuff is coming up in the near future.
Okay, man.
Nothing for me tonight.
Okay, Brandy?
Just the AIC meetings that were here in Moscow, talking fun things like budgeting, and I didn't have any commission meetings since our last council meeting.
Well, we're
Went
gonna
to
have a
the,
gobber.
went to the Chamber of Commerce hosted the informational session that Gary presented about the upcoming bond, and there was some diverse attendance there and good questions, so that's all I have.
Catherine?
And I worked at the farmer's market from 8 to 1 and talked with all the public. And the draw is officers in uniform, especially young officers. The kids and the people just flocked to them. It was so exciting. And they got a lot of information out about what the police station will be. And we got to really help people understand that the building was a concept, but it has to do the bond. So it was truly educational, lots of conversations about that. And I just kept telling people it's infrastructure, water, sewer, streets, police. Understand that this is part of the infrastructure, just like we plan other things. And even the people that were usually had long conversations with. And then I brought Gary in a couple times when I felt like his way would be more persuasive.
Can't imagine being more persuasive than you.
But it's really wonderful, and I think that the way that you all plan that is really helping people understand government in general and the process completely. So it was really fun. I enjoyed it.
Okay. Well, on the 22nd, we had a MIAC meeting in here with our Mayor's Youth Advisory Council, and these kids are excited about bringing something forward. We're going to have a brunch for the MIAC kids are going to put on for first responders on the 18th of May right here in this building, which is going to be kind of fun. We'll see one of the second project that these kids are bringing forward to do, so I'm very excited about that. On the 24th, I had an airport board meeting and go over where we're at, and that was the first official day that they actually started to land asphalt down on the new runway, so they're clipping right along nicely with that. And as Brandy had said, on the 29th, we had an AIC all-day district meeting. I was there as well, and Arthur was there, and Gina with us. And then on the 4th, as Catherine said, I was there as well, manning the booth and talking to people, and many people. I don't know how many different folks. And one of the things that came up frequently we got a chance to talk about is the concept of the police department has not been designed yet, of course. And the reason for that, a lot of folks don't understand that it costs thousands of dollars to design these things, and so we're waiting to make sure the bond passes before we do the design of it. But we're very interested in what we can do, and inviting our commission, the Sustainable Environment Commission, as well as others in the public, so we can talk about this thing. So we're looking for a series of meetings that will probably result with that. But first things first, we got to pass the bond in 2 weeks to see how it goes. But that was a very exciting day, and we had 4 officers there, 3 young ones, and then Roger, one of our captains, was there. So, and as well as the chief, on and off. And we were doing tours in the police department too, and we're going to be doing that again this Saturday as well. So those folks that want to see what we're up against, what the police department really is, get a chance to tour it, and come on down and see us so we can talk to you about this. And the next 2 Saturdays, both on the 11th and the 18th, we're going to be doing both of those things. So it should be a fun time for us. But a lot of good questions, a lot of people asking various things about it, and so we're moving forward with it, folks, and it's something that our community can be very, very proud of the direction we're heading in this. So with that, I would ask to adjourn to an executive session per Idaho Code 74-206 1F. This meeting will not reconvene once this executive session is complete, so I need a motion.
To adjourn.
Second.
Okay, moved by Jim, second by Art. I'll start to roll with Catherine.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We will go into executive session in a few minutes. And I'm going to go use